Welcome to Evening TV. I'm Evening Ransom. I want to talk to you about gossip. 3 groups that the narcissist will use. People, your people, and the system. 3 types. One is to use positive talk. This is almost like triangulation. This is where they might even talk to you, like they'll tell you all this positive stuff about someone else, trying to create jealousy, or they'll do this they'll go on and on about you with someone else, trying to create jealousy, trying to create a tension between you. Feigned concern or care. This one I think was the biggie that my ex-husband was doing. Really works well for husbands and parents and things like that, wives and spouses and parents, because it's not going to play off very well with your friends and with society as a whole if they just come out talking really badly and aggressively towards you, especially in this case because I was very vulnerable. I had just had a heart attack. I was a mother. I was young mother of 2 small children, and we were running a business together. I was very dependent on him, and so if he just come out attacking me and aggressively, that wouldn't have gone over very well. So he had to play it up as concern, feigned concern. And so what they did was my health was really compromised at the time, and so I've been taking pain medicine for about a year, and I expressed concern about that, and then I thought I should get off of it. And my mother and my husband were both like, it's fine, the doctors are prescribing it, we're busy, we can't help you. I asked my mother to help me. She's like, I've got a vacation planned, I can't do it. My husband was like, I've got a business to run. It was our business, we were running together, but really his only concession that he made after I had this heart attack and near-death experience, it was very, very, very serious, was that I should take some time off from work. That was the only concession he made, and he never came home. And of course, what he was doing was embezzling money and fixing the books. And we had this sort of agreement that I was going to go to a detox in 6 months when it was winter time. And I didn't tell anybody about this because I didn't want him to look bad, because I thought it was pretty bad that he was not helping me out, that he was basically telling me when the business slowed down, then he would look after the kids and stuff. For 5 days was all I was asking for. And so I kept it to myself because I didn't want to make him look bad. And also I had a lifetime of knowing not to talk about what was wrong with me, knowing I was not supposed to have any needs. And I was in just bunches of denial about what was really going on. I didn't know how to define abuse because it'd been my whole entire life, and so I really didn't know that I was being abused. I knew my husband was not treating me very well. I knew things weren't going very well with us, but I just thought it was a rough time. This is what I thought. I thought, we'll get through it. It's just a rough time. I lived a lot of my life for this happy time that was coming down the road. Toughing it through now. I figure we're in our 30s. We have little kids. We have a business trying to get off the ground. It's just a tough time. One day we'll look back on it and we'll have gotten through it, and then that will have been something we did together. And it was always this thing we're going to do together, and that's what bonds us together, and that's what making a life with somebody is all about, right? This is what I was telling myself. Telling people is that I've got a drug problem and that he's trying to get me to get help, and I'm refusing to go. And the other thing that he did is that he was a planner. Now, my parents were over at Narcissist. They were not planners. They were knee-jerk. They were responding to what he told them about what I said about my childhood, and that I was not singing their praises about what wonderful parents they were, that I was actually talking about that I had been abused as a child. So this was enough of a trigger for them. He had planned this party for me as a way, I believe in retrospect, it took me years to come up with this, but to realize that it was likely that he did that so that he could collect all my friends' phone numbers, and so that he could set a precedent with them where he had a relationship where he could talk to them, where it was secret from me, outside of this, outside of when he was going to leave me. So he had another time, a precedent set where he had done that already, so it wouldn't seem completely outrageous when he did it again. Be self-deprecating, he would compliment people, he would pretend to see people exactly the way they wanted to be seen. He would do all the things that a covert narcissist or a sociopath does. He was a complete and total sociopath. And he was great at manipulating my parents. And the way that he manipulated my parents was to flatter them, to tell them they were everything they wanted to be, and then to tell them that I didn't see them the way that they wanted to be seen, that I was actually a risk for them. My health was falling apart, made me the scapegoat. And I had needs, which made me a scapegoat, because I wasn't supposed to have any needs. I'm sure that he told everybody that I was saying bad things about them, that I was, putting them down, or that I didn't like them, or something like that. There are a lot of other people that I don't know what he said. I really have no idea what he possibly could have said to them to get the reactions that he got from them. I know that the main lie that they were all coming out with, I was a drug addict, that I was addicted to drugs, and that they were trying to get me to get help and I was refusing to go, and that I'd been lying about it and embezzling money from the business to buy drugs and stuff like that. That was the story. That he was also saying that this had something to do with why I had a heart attack in the first place, which it totally did not. But of course, these are more plausible than the truth, because part of the reason people go along with it is because they're offering answers that people really want to believe, and part of the reason, and it's also part of the reason the victim believes a lot of the lies for a long time too. The lies usually are things you want to believe. So no one wants to believe that a healthy 30-year-old woman who isn't smoking, isn't doing anything wrong, isn't doing drugs, could just all of a sudden have a heart attack and almost die. No one wants to believe that. They want to believe that I had to do something to make that happen, because the world is just too crazy and uncertain otherwise, right? So they're offering up an explanation. There actually truly was an explanation, which I actually don't believe was a real explanation. I believe the explanation was that I was heartbroken, that it was all this emotional abuse, this lovelessness that caused this to happen. That's what I believe. But the explanation that the doctors gave it, something called spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which is very rare and very deadly, but it happens to young women. When it happens to women that are young in the childbearing ages, and it has to do with fluctuating estrogen levels. And I did not fit the profile at all for a regular heart attack, but for a SCAD, which is called SCAD, I did fit the profile for that, even though it's extraordinarily rare. That's the explanation that they gave us for what I had, and it was a dissection. I did have a coronary dissection of the LAD, which is the great big coronary artery, and it was really truly a miracle that I lived, because they call that the widowmaker, that when that gets clotted or something, it was truly a miracle that I was alive. The thing I had going against me was that I truly was in post-traumatic stress from having that happen. I was in chronic pain, really scared that I was going to die, still die, and I was dealing with, complete neglect, complete and total neglect. So my health was really compromised. Everyone was acting like they were mad at me because I survived with disabilities. Like, if I was going to have disabilities, I should have just died. It was definitely the message that I was getting loud and clear. So the fact that I was taking painkillers, and also the painkillers I was basically felt like I had to take them, because they were telling me, take them or else, because we're not helping you. So if anything you have to do to make it so that you can keep coping without bothering us is what you need to do, or we're going to abandon you. So this was my utter and total belief that I had to do, which is part of why I wasn't telling anybody about it. So to tell myself what's really going on is infinitely worse to me than to tell myself that they think that I have a drug problem and they're concerned about me. And so I start jumping through hoops trying to prove that I don't have a drug problem. I go to detox, I agree to go to treatment, I do all this, And and everything I'm doing is I'm making the biggest mistakes in the world that I could be making, because I'm proving the only evidence there is of their lie is the fact that I am trying to prove it. It's the fact that I'm going to get treatment and stuff for this alleged drug problem. The third person they'll use is the system, and also will be negative talk. And so this is also the thing that he did. So he actually did go to the police, set me up with because, and I tell this in another one of my videos, the video called My Sociopathic Divorce, for this whole story. He used the system and he played the system like a fiddle. Psychology of the family court system, the psychology of groupthink or consensus, it really plays right into narcissist hands. Good people, really conscientious people, just can't believe someone would do this. I mean, the idea that someone is doing this, and doing this to their loving wife, doing this to someone that they really, their friend that they really care about, that to them is unbelievable. And it would even be more unbelievable that my own family was doing it. So I never talked badly about my family, so everything that I could come out saying was a day late and a dollar short. I didn't know the truth about them until it was too late. So it was, utterly, totally damaging to me. It was. It just seemed so outrageous that anyone would do this. And what they were saying about me was unbelievable too, but really not as unbelievable as what was really happening. Usually what they will do is the lies that they tell are the things that they're doing. I don't think there's a lot you can do about it. You need to speak your truth, but it may not do you any good. So just know that. If the damage isn't already done, if you are anticipating a smear campaign, you're in a lot better shape. But if the damage is already done, if they've already smeared you and you're trying to do damage control now, you're in a much tougher spot. And it was so utterly devastating for me was because so many of the people in my life were narcissists, which I didn't know, of course. And so what that means is they had limited capacity for empathy. And the narcissism that I saw among people that were in therapy situations was really outrageous. Lawyers, totally outrageous. All the videos I have about how to get through the divorce are really good, and they really touch on this a lot. But one of the big things about the smear campaign is that they are going to be very calm when they're doing this, right? And you're going to be getting more and more frantic, and you're being lied about. Things are happening you can't believe, and people are turning on you that you thought would always have your back, and it's just a nightmare unfolding, and you're starting to have a breakdown, right? So you look bad, and you're going to be angry, you're going to be upset, you're going to be devastated and hurt, and you're going to come out, defending yourself. So you're frantic, you're emotional, you're all these things, and he's calm as a cucumber, and he's saying, oh, I'm just so concerned about her. See what I'm dealing with? See how upset she is? See how emotional she is now? And then also because he's saying she's erratic, she's on drugs, makes it even worse, right? So I was falling into every trap because I really absolutely believed in the truth. I believe people knew me. I believe people had my back. And that they would be a lot more like, no, I need to see that. There were a few people that did say, no, that doesn't sound right. Because basically the gist of the story was, she has a drug problem. You need to just kind of like not answer her calls and stuff because we've got it handled, right? We're kind of doing tough love, and so we don't want you to interfere with what our plan is. So if you could just kind of leave it to us, that'd be great. So they were trying to isolate me more and more. That was the game plan, and most everyone went along with it. And there are a couple of people that did so, I believe, pretty naively, became flying monkeys, helping him, giving him information that were not on purpose. They ended up helping him, but didn't have really malicious intent. There were a couple of those. There were others that had at least at least selfish intent. And then there were others who were like, no, that doesn't sound right. But even the ones that didn't abandon me right then, my life was at this point absolutely in chaos, and it was really not okay again for quite a long time. And so people that had made I was a friend, we had something in common, there was nothing in common between us anymore after that happened. And so I had a lot of need, and I had no family, and I was really desperate. I was not a peer of theirs anymore. And so I tried to stay friends with them as long as I could. Finally, I backed away because I thought, I need them more than a friend should need them. I came back around when I finally felt like I had my life secure, and I felt like I could be a peer again. I felt like our lives were sort of, they'd gone through divorces, nothing like mine, but they'd gone through divorces, and I was remarried, and things were back into a balance. And I had just rekindled with 3 friends right when I started this channel, and then my son died. And those relationships, those 3 friends, that I didn't hear from them after that. So, and those are the ones I was saying, like one's in graduate school to be a counselor, the other one's a massage therapist, the other one's like some kind of therapist. They're all like, things with empathy and compassion are big factors, and they showed me very, very little compassion, so that was really disheartening. I needed to state my truth. I needed to tell someone what really happened, what the real truth was, and I've done very little of that. Part of the reason was because it was so overwhelming. It was just so big, and I didn't even know what the truth was for a while. It took me a while to even know what the truth was. And, it came in waves, and, learning about all of this stuff. And I had just such bigger fish to fry. My life was so completely devastated that trying to care about what anybody thought about me or what they thought happened was yesterday's news at this point. And so it's only now, and also because I was really concerned mostly with, my kids and the future and all of that. And so it was only when my sons had both become adults and were legally free that I even started to think about, I wanted to start telling my story. And so I was there anyway. And then when my son died, then it became even more of a need, because then it was like, then I felt like, I felt like this is a tragedy. This tragedy didn't need to happen. And it was already a tragedy, but now it's the ultimate tragedy that's not going to get rectified, The tragic childhood was supposed to be remedied by this life, this adult life that he was going to go on to live, and he didn't get a chance to do that. And so that put more of a reason in me to feel like I needed to come out and start talking about what happened and start talking about this abuse. And so that is not the same as defending myself and all that stuff. And so I'm still going to write a book. I did start the channel, and I sent a video to my parents. It's actually up here on the channel. It's one of my videos I have on my channel. I sent a video to his mother saying basically what my truth was, and our business partners. I feel like I kind of want to tell them. I just want to say to them, just basically, I need you to know that I didn't steal anything. If you were told that I was stealing, I need you to know that that is a lie. And they probably won't believe me, but I need to say it. And so I think I'm probably going to do that. My parents, he and my family still get together. My niece and nephew they believe that I abandoned the family, So the truth has never come out. The truth never did set me free. But that truth, at least it never remedied any of those relationships. So my old life was really lost, and I had to completely start over. And the really rough part was that the only people that were in both lives were my kids, and that was very isolating for them. And living with that cognitive dissonance, and even not knowing completely what the whole truth was either, because they were kids, was was really rough on them. And they wanted a family too, and so it was always really hard. You couldn't have both things. You couldn't have a family and the truth. The truth and your mother's love and this person who had your back and all that. To have that, which was, they had that, you had to give up your belief that you had a loving family, because their family was anything but loving. So that's how it works. So they will use their friends, your friends, and the system. They will do positive talk, feigned concern, and then negative talk. Those are the three places and the three types of gossip that they will use. And they will use flying monkeys, who some have an investment in it, some don't, and a lot of it is consensus. And they will use your kids. Your kids are their primary pawns that they will use. They will use what you care about the most. They'll use money, they'll use your relationships, and they'll use your kids, and they'll use your reputation, and they'll use the things you care about, the things you value, is what they'll use. And so, like I do believe absolutely that even though he never could take my kids from me, when my son ultimately ended up dying, I believe that was completely a victory for him. It's like, I won after all. Even though he lost his son too, he didn't care. He was always willing to lose the kids, to have the kids go down in a ball of flames, to ruin their self-esteem, to ruin their lives, to ruin their childhoods, to cause them to be drug addicts, to cause them to commit suicide. He was always willing to do that, as long as I lost them. So, I see he has no problem with it at all, that he's lost Noah. So that's one reason I'm really bound and determined not to let that be just the sad, tragic end of the story.